Okay, I'll welcome you again. Thanks for being on the call. And if you've had a chance to look at this post summit strategy for the calls, I will put that in the chat. So what we're envisioning these calls to be are an opportunity for the community to get an update on the things that we are working on, collectively or individually, and so that we can increase visibility and alignment. And then what we're also looking at doing are forming the opportunity for project teams. Now, the project teams themselves will come on and give a very brief update every month on where they're at, what they need, what they're doing, just so everybody has more visibility around that. That's the goal, is to eliminate siloing and duplication of efforts and all that stuff that goes around mass collaboration. Then you have, we thought what would be a definite value add for the community is to have some peer learning opportunities, or opportunities to gain resources that we don't have. So whether it's a fire starter length, 10, 15 minutes of a topic, we could have somebody come and speak to us about something in particular, like talking about having Kyle talk about recidivism and incarceration and how that affects the community. Maybe having Jenny and her team talk about the work that they do around people with different abilities, because we're looking at inclusive field. We can do some DEI content. I can have somebody who's a content expert come and talk. I think collecting a list of things that interest you and that you'd like to learn about, or that you can help increase knowledge of. So all of us have things that we know about that we don't have the opportunity to always present and share with our colleagues. So this will give us an opportunity, and then the rest of that time will be taken up with discussion about whatever topic and what else the community needs. So to that end, we will be looking for definitely ESHIP champions that are involved in particular calls, but also other people who aren't necessarily or not yet ESHIP champions to help curate content. So working collaboratively. So it's less about me hosting the call. It's more about all of you hosting the call and what it needs. And I'm simply here to create the mechanisms for which that happens. So I can come on, turn on Zoom. You can turn on Zoom. It will auto record. And then at the end, I'll just take that and log it onto the dashboard. A little bit of the face of the dashboard will change a little bit, I think, as we add the initiatives, and we will probably end up with a page for each goal on the dashboard, so that all the video links live in one place, all the current project canvases and future project canvases will live in that place. I'm thinking that there should be some kind of directory so that you can find each other. If you want to send each other messages, still thinking kind of old school, where there's a forum, which is a little bit deeper discussion than Slack, but easier to navigate if you're looking for topics or threads. Does that make sense? So I don't know if any of you have been part of a forum, and you know, obviously it's my Springsteen world. We had a whole forum that was all about the music. So anybody who wanted to geek out and just talk about the songs and the lyrics and 5 different versions of Thunder Road, you know, they'll all get on there. There was a forum for people who exchanged tickets. There's a forum of people who exchanged music. And then there was a whole political forum that we called the Fight Club. And and that was a whole group in themselves, and they would talk about politics and all kinds of things that were going on, news updates. So you can navigate the forum in the way that you want. And I'm still thinking that maybe some of that can happen, because it's really hard to keep up on Slack if you don't know that there's been conversation that's had before. Does that make sense? It's a much harder search if you know that the content is there, like, oh, Eric posted something 2 weeks ago and I can't think of it, so I will look it up in the search. But if you're new to the community, you don't know about the conversations that took place before, and so it's very hard to follow the thread. Does that make sense?
Are those forums, are you picturing them within Slack? So they would be
I'm picturing that as part of the dashboard, maybe.
Dashboard, okay, yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Eric's nodding his head.
Yeah,
Eric, you're old school. You know those places, those internet sites, those chat rooms.
Old fan fiction for X-Files like 13 years ago. Sure, I've been there. But to Tiffany's point, I think that is actually something that kind of might confuse me. So I think there is a challenge if you try and have forums in different locations. That to me sounds messy and potentially bad. But I do think it is useful to have a place where I know I can go, because frankly, I'm thinking about this and looking for this right now. You know, how can I find out what's the state of the art, or what's the state of the game on different projects and things, and
yeah,
you know, trying to find that in Slack is not helpful. But so a single place would be great.
Okay. Beth, are you familiar with the kind of forums that I'm talking about?
I think I would be when I see them.
Okay. Yeah, so let me have that discussion with the rest of the ESHIP team and see what we can come up with and whether or not that's viable. So whatever. Kyle, are you back with us?
I'm here.
You are. Good. Okay. What we didn't do when we started the call was check in and see how everyone is arriving today. So I'm going to tell you that I'm arriving after a meeting, no, 2 meetings, and which include, one of them included a meal, and which is good, and another call. So, but there's a good rhythm that's happening, and looking forward to just really not thinking about entrepreneurship and ecosystem building for a whole day tomorrow, maybe. So I will popcorn to Eric, who doesn't have his mute on.
Oh my heavens! Yes, celebrates Independence tomorrow. I'm sorry, and I missed the question because I was looking off screen. So can you give that to me again? I'm sorry.
How are you arriving today?
How am I arriving? I'm motivated. I'll just leave it at that. Hey Tiffany, how you doing? I'll popcorn to you.
I'm good. I am arriving refreshed and happy. I slept until 11:30, and I'm really happy about that. Grateful for that opportunity to do that. So I'm still drinking my morning coffee. Feeling good.
Nice.
Beth, I'll turn it to you.
I'm arriving happy and excited for friends and family for the holiday. Excited with all the different aspects of this ecosystem building work that are going on, but also pretty overwhelmed with all the different things that need to get done, but that's okay. Wouldn't have it any other way. Popcorn to Kyle. Are you with us?
Yes.
So Kyle, how are you arriving?
Yeah, I'm arriving a little bit tired, but also very much enjoying my lunch. So forgive me for being on mute so you don't have to listen, but thank me for not having to listen to my munching. And I'll popcorn to whoever hasn't gone yet.
Okay, I think we're all kind of covered. Beth, did that food from Pittsburgh make it to your gathering?
It did. It was wonderful. And we're still working on the beer.
Okay, it makes it sound like we had that much beer, but we were in Pittsburgh together for Forward Cities, and in one of those occasions we actually ended up cooking together. So And we have somebody else who joined us.
Hi, this is Jose Alvarez from Prospera here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Jose Alvarez from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so so I'm going to I have in the Slack, and then I can send it off in an email afterwards. I've hesitated. We record the calls when we do them, and I've hesitated in posting them up on the dashboard only because we don't know what the dashboard is going to look like. So Christine and I will be redesigning the dashboard, and as I shared on the dashboard where the initiatives and the videos and all the information will currently live, it's more of a working group orientation for anybody who wants to dive a little deeper. So thinking about the fact that we have not yet sent out the communication after the ESHIP Summit, part of that is because so many pieces have to align between the conversations that happen with the ecosystem building community, the conversations that are happening around national resource providers. And there's an overlap of some of them. So we definitely have national resource providers that are parts of these calls, but there's a little bit of different nuanced conversation about the way they support the initiatives that's going on. And then we have a general email that will go out to everybody around the ecosystem building community that signs up for the Kauffman newsletter. So also, as you talk to people in your community and they have interest in getting involved, it's really hard for them to know where to plug in. So trying to put together and support the Facebook page, which is probably more general discussion around ecosystem building. So if you have, and I've had people that have been invited to and logged in, and they don't realize that we post questions for people to answer. The reason that there are questions for people to answer is we want to make sure that this is the community that they're looking for, right? So they could randomly find ESHIP community. They have no idea what that is. Click on it to join, and then they're going to hit that roadblock, which is me and the other moderators and administrators, that they're going to say, please answer the questions so we can know. We can approve your request to join. If you invite somebody to the community, please let them know you invited them so that they can make that concerted. Otherwise, what happens is if we randomly accept, first of all, we don't know who they are. They could be like the bots and, just going in and getting people's information. So that's one of the things. The other thing is we don't want the information to randomly show up on their Facebook feed and for them to assume that it's just being spammed with all the information. Like there's some kind of level of engagement. If they're a little bit more curious and want to dive into more conversations, we're always happy to have more people sign up, or those that are curious, sign up on the Kauffman newsletter that goes out. And if you've not signed up on the Kauffman newsletter, please sign up. I know most of you have, otherwise you wouldn't have known about this call. Then the Slack channel is probably for more in-depth discussions, generally. And then we've got that dashboard, which is more oriented towards the goals. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions?
No questions here.
All right, excellent. Okay, so now the reason that I'm saying all of this is because we're about to get ready to have more people join the community. Once those emails go out, at least for the next little bit, people are going to be a little more engaged, a little more curious, and they'll sign up. And my question for all of you is, as new people come onto these calls, like Jose, and say, hey, Jose, you've not been with us before. What do you need to know so that so that you benefit from being on the call and we benefit from having you on the call. So I'm curious to know, hold on, I'm curious to know from all of you, and so I'm going to put this out there and we'll popcorn to each other and maybe ask, what draws you to being on this particular call or calls in general? So why do you show up every month? Jose, what made you curious about joining us today?
Thank you. And one of the reasons why I became curious is because I've been involved here in the Charlotte ecosystem with an organization called Innovate Charlotte, which is funded in part by the NCIDEA Foundation, which is an ecosystem building organization. And so I've had a wonderful experience being a mentor for Innovate Charlotte. And so in the process of being a mentor and helping all these tech startups, I became interested, more informed and more interested about these ecosystem building efforts. So I started doing some research, and then I heard what you guys were doing. So that's why I became interested, because I want to make sure I don't duplicate efforts of other organizations. And so, wanted to become more aware of what's been done and how I can help a little bit in the effort of helping build my ecosystem here in the Charlotte MSA.
Wonderful, thank you. So since Jose's on the phone and can't see all of us on the screen, normally what we do, Jose, when we say popcorn, we just call on the next person. But since you're here and you can't see anybody, I can call on somebody. Kyle's eating his lunch. I'm gonna go with Eric.
And I will unmute. I think this is the biggest single most fundamental problem. And when I say this, I'm being a little more specific to kind of barriers to access for different groups, thinking broadly. I think that, there's so many different kinds of groups that I think we're all dealing with, but removing those obstacles, I think it's the right thing to do. On the one hand, just speaking as somebody who works for government, it's something that we need to do. But in addition to that, the potential that this unlocks for new business and growth of our economies is simply tremendous. So, for all those various reasons, I think this is the most important thing to be involved with. So, I keep showing up. I will popcorn to Beth.
Thank you, Eric, and I agree and echo with everything that you said. I come here to this call because I think it is the biggest problem that most communities are facing, whether it's in the entrepreneurial ecosystem or not. And I need to learn as much as I can about it and want to be part of the solution if we're able to land on one. And then on the flip side, I've been brainwashed to understand that problems are opportunities, so I'm looking for the opportunities in this as well. And I will popcorn, hopefully. Oh, Tiffany, you haven't gone yet. We'll leave Kyle's lunch alone.
Well, one thing that I love about these phone calls and just this community in general is the ESHIP community is that people are coming from so many different places and so many different perspectives. And I'm constantly reminded that my view of diversity or inclusion or thought of it is not all inclusive. There's so many just viewpoints and experiences that they're just not in my everyday reality. And so I need to be reminded and I need to learn. I was in a conversation yesterday with someone. We were talking about how can we increase our outreach? How can we bring more people into the fold? And he mentioned the importance of having diversity of education levels and how sometimes people who may not have completed high school may not feel comfortable coming to some of our events or reaching out to a mentor. And I'm like, that's something that I don't always think about is, you know, what is someone's education level? And so that's just another layer of someone's person, you know, who they are, that needs to be considered when trying to create the sense of belonging and provide resources to people that are accessible to everyone. And so that's why I come to this call in particular, is to just be, you know, constantly not even exposed, but I just need that enlightenment, that awakening of, you know, there are how many billions of people in the world? I don't know, millions. And we're all different, right? And so I know I'm never going to reach that place where every type, not even type, but every perspective is realized. But I hope that I will just continue to learn, you know, just about people. And so, yeah, hopefully, Kyle, you've had a chance to chew and swallow, so I'll throw it to you.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Yeah, so Kansas City's my home, and I love it here, thanks in big part to the entrepreneurial ecosystem builders who have welcomed me with open arms. And so I will take any opportunity to help support and learn from entrepreneurial ecosystem builders all over the country. And this topic of diversity and inclusion is something that's really important to me for the same reason that's important to all you guys, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
All right. So now that we know why we're all here, thinking about when people come to this space, how is it that we can welcome them better? And I think one of those things that we talked about doing is putting together more of an agenda for these calls, so that there's a little bit of structure of things that they can be aware of. So we talk about the call cadence having to do with the updates. So maybe some of you can only be on a call for a very short time. And that's why if we put the updates up on top, I will share with the community what's going on the ESHIP side, on the Kauffman side, some things that are happening. If I know of anything, there's a lot, but I don't know of anything. So I will be happy to be that intermediary and share that information. Any of you that are working on project teams that are specific to this goal or interrelated with this goal, then we can definitely share that. And then giving an opportunity for us to learn together about a topic. And Kyle, I don't know if you heard me when I said one of the things that we would love to do is to pick certain topics like recidivism and have people who work along that and just expand our knowledge just a little bit. And like Tiffany said, we're not going to know it all, but there are people on this call that know things that we don't know, and together with the brain power on these calls, we'll learn more together. So if there's a topic that you always wanted to know about, if there's something that you want to have presented or gain greater insight onto, I think that's this would be the place, because if you can't do it in a community of ecosystem builders, it's definitely much harder to do it in the other part of the world, right? In your own community or wherever. Then we'd love to offer an opportunity for anybody who wants to share some things that they're working on in their personal and professional life that work towards that. I know one of the things that I'm working on is next month I'll be attending a couple of workshops for certification to do some cultural competency assessments. So I will be certified to assess on cultural competency, unconscious bias classes and workshop train the trainer things. That's just to expand. So that's an investment in me and the work that I want to do. And if any of you have something that's going on, we'd love to hear about it, because we're all great resources for each other. And then the big looming question out there from the Kauffman Foundation is, how do we know that what we're doing is working? You know, we came together in 2017, 450 people in a room. We started talking about this subject that I think some people had an idea about. There was a notion. Some people have been working at for a really long time, and some people who just aren't sure. So there's something that happened, and from that point in 20, and let's start measuring from 2017 till now, that how do we know that we're closer to solving for the ESHIP goals? So that's kind of a wide open question. Malika, I'm glad you joined us.
Thank you.
No worries. I'm glad that you're here. So we covered how are you arriving today. So we're all here. So we'll have to ask you how you're arriving today. I didn't think I got a chance to ask Jose how he's arriving today. And then the other question is also what brings you to these calls, so that maybe it can give us a little better insight on how we can welcome other people to the call. So how are you arriving and what brings you here?
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. I am arriving flustered. I got my nieces here, and so I'm doing hair at the same time, but I wanted to make this call because it's important to me. So what brings me here is just I'm interested in the progression of this in our field, and so I want to be present.
Great, great. And Jose, so you talked to us about what brings you to these calls. We never got a chance to ask you. So when we ask, how are you arriving today? It's just how are you arriving?
So we've been involved by the organization that I work for. It's called Prospera, which is an organization has a presence in Florida and here in North Carolina. So we've been involved with the Kaufman Foundation for a while. In fact, our CEO did a presentation, I think it was last year, about Latino entrepreneurship, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we became involved. And, I've been following up a little bit what we've been doing with them and my team as well. So
Don't worry.
that's how I became involved.
Okay, great. All right. Malika, how many people do you have in that room with you?
No. Uh-oh. Am I not on mute?
No.
Okay, I'm going to mute. I got a lot of kids over here.
All right, that's all right. And then when you get a chance, I would love for all of you to put your input into the document that we created with the proposal. So any ideas on how we start to measure how we've grown? I mean, we can, they counted over 1,000 Post-it notes after the first ESHIP summit. I don't know that Post-it notes are the gauge of are we closer to solving for the goals. It does mean that a lot of people have put in a lot more thought to it, right? So, yes, Eric.
So pardon me, I'll try and make a comment on this. And I got another thing to try and introduce maybe here, maybe some other time, sometime a little bit later. I mean, one thing that can be done is, sometimes it's handy for infographics to capture the number of Post-it notes and the number of other kinds of things. That's kind of like a fun, frankly, bullshit graphic that works. X number of hours, 10,000 Post-it notes, all that kind of stuff. I think something that's, and I think, down the line, but I'm not sure how far, finding better ways to measure these kinds of things has got to be part of the probably Group 5's look at this stuff. But one other tool that I think we might use that could be useful in the general conversations is maybe toward the end you have just a quick, has anybody in the room had some wins recently on this topic? And just kind of, I know that's anecdotal, but having some wins that we can maybe trace or associate with these kinds of conversations, that could be, I think, useful and might also provide fodder for, going deeper into the actual data. Just a thought.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that wins are important. Stories are very important, as we all know. And people that are working on storytelling, and Beth, who's really focused on global awareness and PSAs, I think that infuses it. And I feel like maybe part of that. If we do put it at the end of the call, at least we're ending on a high, right? There are wins out there. If nobody says anything, then we're obviously all in trouble. But hopefully the things are, I think the Value Web team tried to capture that at the last summit a little bit when they were putting together the timeline on the walls. We put together some of the high points of the things that have transpired. But, you know, there are other things that happened, like because of the summits, somebody met someone else and they started talking and then they put together and they worked on something. I mean, that's a huge win. So the goal is, so let me share with you some of the thoughts of last week while we were up at the foundation. You know, the idea of mass collaboration is great. In order to get to mass collaboration, we're going to need some structure. We're going to need some more communications, and definitely it's got to be squishy and flexible. Otherwise, we can't be rigid in building the things. And so the analogy that I've now embraced is basically what Christine and I do is create scaffold. So the scaffold isn't meant to be there forever. The scaffold is meant to support and help in creating this thing around us. As all of you, all of us together create this field of ecosystem building, we're going to hold up the scaffold and make it bigger and wider. The things that we can infuse is creating this kind of community so that it offers opportunity for relationships. And as these relationships strengthen, there's more visibility because there's more communication. And so communication is all about us telling each other what's going on and learning from each other, right? So that's where the visibility comes in. And I've tried to really take myself away from words like transparency, because there have been questions around how much is shared. What's Kauffman doing? Are there secret plots, and, you know, are there handshake deals and whatever? I can tell you in several months of working with the Kauffman Foundation that the scope of the things I don't know about what they're doing, even standing in the building, is immense, right? There's a whole nother department that does education, and I don't know anybody in there. There's like a whole room upstairs of people I don't know. I don't think that it's the mindset of whether or not people are being transparent isn't so much as, I don't know what information people want to know, right? If you have a question, then we can always ask and see if we can find the answer. But as far as the volume of information, holy cow, I cannot even, and I don't know half the things that Andy's working on, and I'm on Andy's team, right? So it's just a lot, and there's a lot of people in the building, and they're working on a lot of things. So if you have any questions that are Kauffman related, please feel free to ask. If you have questions that other people are involved in, ask them, right? That's what the relationships are about. It's about creating visibility. So visibility we can help in. Alignment is like coordination, right? So coordination is like traffic laws. So we put together traffic laws so that people don't collide into each other in bad ways. They're just a guideline. So if you have more visibility, you know what other people are working on, then you don't work in a silo. You don't, you have more communication, more connectedness, and then you're not duplicating efforts and recreating the wheel and all those things that we talk about that are always a problem, right? So with alignment, we can help in that. The coordination part really does lay more on you than us, because you have to choose to coordinate. If you don't coordinate, I mean, nobody's forcing you to create a project team and work together towards an initiative or an MVP, right? The hope is that with all of this information, we can see Tiffany's working on something and Kyla's working on something, and there's an opportunity to work together or in tandem, or make sure that we're not overstepping, or there's not that scarcity mindset, all those things, that's the perfect combination. And then the greater part would be the mass collaboration. Mass collaboration is nothing that the foundation really has any control over, nor should it. Mass collaboration is about all of us. So is the coordination, because we can only build so far, and then it's up to everybody else. So what do you need in community to help foster that? And so I want you to think about, and if you'll share, where you've seen, because I think we all know that top-down isn't working for everyone. Bottom-up doesn't always, as much as we would like it to, bottom-up still needs structure. So we're all the people in the middle. And how does that sit with you? How does that resonate?
It resonates, but I don't know the answer.
I don't think all of us, I don't think any of us have answers. I think we have some parts of the answer.
Really, the goal meetups and the project teams launch, I think, is a really good step towards kind of, it's still squishy and everybody's invited, but it's a little bit more clear, and I feel like there's more meat on the bone to really move forward.
Can you think of, Beth, anything else you need top of mind that would help move that forward?
I think, we're all really busy, so that this volunteering to get engaged in the ESHIP goals is really important to a lot of us, but difficult because we've got so many other things that we're focused on. But thinking about when we're working on projects, or we're part of these calls, or we know these calls are coming up, who isn't at the table that should be, and maybe purposefully inviting them. If all of us think of at least one person around each goal that we could invite to the table, I think that would be valuable. I just haven't, to be frank, haven't taken the time to really think through that. Who's missing from this conversation, and how do we engage them?
No, that's good though. But you're being mindful about it. That's helpful.
I agree. I think that's a great point. The couple of things that I was thinking, not totally connected. I think that there's always sort of like this trust problem, especially when you're dealing with different, the dynamics of, power differentials kind of stuff. So, in some ways, Kaufman's got all the power. And I think Kaufman has been extremely authentic and very responsive to questions about, that in and of itself. However, I think having had any experience with larger, corporate entities and nonprofits, et cetera, I think sometimes there's like a suspicion that they're going to do their own thing. So I think that's just sort of, in a way, a fact of life, and it's going to be something that the Kaufman Foundation has to deal with throughout this process. One thing that I found a tool that actually does connect to that from a racial equity training thing I was doing a couple months back was a spectrum of engagement that they had for working with community. And it was basically, what it had was basically where, there was an entity sort of convenes everything, and they've got the plan and they run things and they're getting input from the community. And it really started from, and whether it was, I think this was oriented towards government, but it's oriented towards larger organizations. So like in a government situation, typically we're the convener, but we kind of know what questions we want to ask, all those kinds of things. But it varies as you move down the spectrum and you establish trust in these relationships with folks throughout community. Are they advisors now? Or are we bringing them on early in the process? And the way that this map played out differently than most maps that I've seen is that the final step, or not necessarily that this is a progression, but I think it's appropriate in this case, is actual community ownership of an issue or a topic of something moving forward. Typically, it's something like empowerment, but that empowerment seems to have some constraints the idea that an entity that's doing this is eventually going to hand this off to the people in the community to take leadership on their own, I think is super, super powerful. I think that's in line with what Kaufman's, wanting to do. But I think it's one of those things that, and Andy says it a lot, this is something that the community needs known, but it's something that we kind of need to keep expressing that that's the direction we're going.
I like that. That's great. Anybody else have any thoughts to add?
I keep going back to the question of where do the NRPs fall in all of this? I think that Kaufman has done a good job communicating to the people who are available to listen that this is, a community-led movement. But I think that some people who maybe aren't like in these continuous conversations don't really, they still view it as it's a Kaufman-led thing. Kaufman has the summit. Kaufman's hosting the calls and the websites and things. And I think it would be helpful to know even where the NRP's interests lie in the different goals and in the specific initiatives. And it might help as project teams are being developed to have some sort of space. And I don't know how to integrate it, right now, but to have space to connect them to an NRP, even if it's in the discussion phase. And I know that that's kind of a delicate balance because an NRP is not they can't commit right away. They can't commit until they know what something's gonna look like on the back end. But I think on the flip side, a project team or even a group of people working together on an initiative don't really know how far to go or how much time and energy to put into anything if they don't know that there's going to be some support of it. I don't think that every initiative requires financial support, really, but even to have some, there just has to be some way to claim ownership in some capacity and to give people the knowledge to know that that's okay to move forward. But I don't have any suggestions like Eric did. That was a great tool that you offered, but I don't know.
I think we're all working through that, and I appreciate you for bringing that up. So as some of you may know, Christine, my colleague, is focused with national resource providers. She's actually having conversations with the ones that have been involved for a while and some new people that have come to the table, and talking about the commitments that national resource providers will create or offer as part of these initiatives. It should align with their mission and vision of what they want to put forth in the world, whether they be a foundation or a for-profit or nonprofit organization. Like, how does that align with those initiatives? And so they're looking at these initiatives and viewing, so where do we fit in the ecosystem? And we, for a long time, or for a while, and I was guilty of this, we would talk about economic development people, and it was an us and them, and that's archaic and old school. And what we are the new way of thinking about economic development. Now I feel like it's, we're, as Del Gines talked about at the ESHIP Summit, it's an evolution, right? So that's, yes. So we know that it's really hard for economic development people or anybody when you're met with, oh, you don't get it. This is something new and ongoing, and you're like, you're back in the Stone Age kind of thing. And there are other people out there, your policymakers, certain educators, other organizations, and I think that they're all part of the ecosystem. They just don't know what role they play. I think the NRPs are there. They have some idea of the role they play in the other things that they do. They just don't see which role they play in ecosystem building at this time. So having those conversations. So take your organization, for example. The Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation has a mission, a vision, a scope of work that you're interested in doing. And maybe what they do is they say, so we're going to support Tiffany in the work that she does with ESHIP, basically, and moving that field forward. So I think, and that's a great contribution to have you engaged on behalf of the foundation and your brain power and the things that you bring. That helps move the field forward. If there's an organization like, I don't know, if there was a national, Kyle, you'll have to tell me whether or not there's a national organization or association that helps people that have been incarcerated move on to the next. There's like a lot of little field or locally, regionally focused things, but is there a national one, Kyle?
So there are national organizations that are focused on reentry broadly and corrections broadly and justice broadly, but specifically entrepreneurship, no.
Okay, so I think, trying to help Kyle grow those connections and say, hey, there's somebody in our community, and there's somebody who just reached out to me, he's in Tallahassee, Florida, says, hey, I've got a sticky situation. I don't know what to do. And so us being able to connect, those are things, unfortunately, like as Eric was saying, it's really hard to measure. It's hard to measure trust. It's hard to measure connections. It's hard to measure the impact that these relationships hold. Without metrics, we don't know where we're going and we don't know which way we're headed in. So that helps. But those are things that are really hard. And I don't know if Malika or Jose have any ideas of how we address those things.
In hearing all of you discuss for the past few minutes, it's a tough one. But I think one of the things that I've benefited from previous, working with previous partners is basically just coming down to having clear goals, first of all, and then having the attitude towards working together. I mean, just I think that's a basis of building a positive and impactful ecosystem. Just having a clear objectives and then figuring it out with great attitude towards working to the goals, in how to have actual numbers and measure the actual impact. So I don't know, maybe there could be some tool that we can base it off on. I don't know, maybe we want to start by measuring initially the number of people that we impact in a specific ecosystems, number of one-on-ones, number of seminar attendees. I don't know. It could be something just to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is either, but I think I can't think of better people to have in the room to discuss with, right? So because all of us have that passion or mindset. Something that was brought up on a call, Norris on the last call said they did this thing called, what's it called? An unreasonable ask, something like that, or it's just some wild wish of something that you want or need. And I think there's a part in our calls where we could put something out there that says, hey, if you know of anybody. So Beth was asking about connecting with REI folks, so Race Equity Institute. And I think a couple of us on the call have some connection. And so if you have any way to connect to Beth with Race Equity Institute or people around that, then please email her. And then, so I'll just put it out there as we close the call. So in the tomorrow we celebrate Independence Day. I want to celebrate Interdependence Day. So in support of each other, what's the thing that you need right now? Is it personally or professionally? Like what can the community help you with? So I was a 1 Million Cups organizer, and we used to ask, what can the 1 Million Cups community do for you? So I'm going to ask all of you, what can the ESHIP community do for you? And maybe for Malika, that's being in a quiet space to think, because she's got all this festivity going on. I don't know if you're able to join us to say or type it in, but I will ask you if you do. And then I'm going to ask, I'll ask Jose. Jose, what can the ESHIP community do for you?
So, well, you are already doing something that would help not only me as a professional, but also the organization I work for, is understanding that there is a need to develop, to work with each other to, build a strong community / ecosystem for entrepreneurship. So that in itself is great. So you are giving, the second thing that I would need from you is a lot of information. Because as I mentioned, the reason why I'm here participating is because I want to make sure, and I don't reinvent the wheel here in my community, and I want to learn best practices of ecosystem building so that I don't have to, spend the time. Instead of spending 300 hours in researching and developing tools, perhaps you guys have something that I could start using and implementing here. And so that's, basically knowledge and information that I can get from you.
Great. Were you were at the ESHIP Summit?
No, I was not. It was my boss was there, and one of our senior consultants. But I'm definitely going next year.
Okay. Well, why don't you do this? I have a couple of different email addresses, but one of the easiest ways to communicate with Christine and myself is there's an email address, eshipgoals@gmail.
Okay.
If you will email me and send me your address, we'll get a copy of the ecosystem building playbook to you. So you will have your own copy, and you can read that at your leisure. So there's a way that I can at least support.
Thank you so very much. So
you're welcome.
eshipgoals@gmail.com, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the easiest one to reach both of us. I have a consultant's email, and Christine does too, but it's easier just to send it to that, and then we'll send you out a copy. And then we typically popcorn, so I usually have you call on somebody. I don't know if you know who's on the phone or...
Kind of, sort of.
Okay. Is there somebody who you want to call on?
Oh, you mean no? I'm sorry. My apologies. No, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Then I will popcorn to the other person on the phone, which will be Kyle.
Since we're all, or at least many of us, nonprofit professionals, I'll make the joke that all of us are thinking. Please make checks payable to Determination Incorporated. Also, I just look forward to all the conversations that are happening, and if you guys know of any entrepreneurial ecosystem builders in your area that are working with justice-involved individuals, I would love to chat, and I'll popcorn to Eric.
Hey, thanks. Let's see. This probably isn't right in all situations, but I think if everyone could look for opportunities to include more people who might be interested in the conversation, and that comes from both planning and larger events. Even if they don't necessarily have a direct role, I think sometimes including those other voices, if we make that a little more of a habit, I think that can lead to these ideas of the ESHIP goals being a little more pervasive and being spread more widely. Because it's awkward, I will popcorn to Malika, although I recognize she might just have to type it in. And it may not work at all.
She is here. I'm going to popcorn to Tiffany because I know she's got to hop in like a minute. So you get a chance to say what you need.
Yes. I don't think I need anything beyond what's already been happening. I think that you know, you and Andy and Christine have been doing a phenomenal job keeping the communication going with regularity, even when it is exhausting. And I think that's my current focus right now, is how can I be of best service to people? And so I guess what I need is for, you know, you and all of the e-shippers to know that I am here to help them however they need, you know, particularly as it comes to mental health. I'm on that kick right now, hence sleeping until 11:30. I'm tired, and so I'm gonna do it and not feel guilty. And so, you know, how can I help you make your job and your life easier? And I mean, that's to you, Cecilia, but to everyone else on the call, I want to be available to them and everyone. So.
Right, and Malika very vehemently typed, I agree with Eric on inviting more people. So let's invite more people to the calls. Let's think about some of the things that we can learn from each other. And I'm going to ask those ESHIP champions on the call to maybe start thinking about what that looks like for next month. And then we'll invite other people in the community to kind of co-host that opportunity and they don't have to commit forever. Maybe they commit for a month, maybe they commit for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and so we'll inspire each other. Okay, so with that, I bid you a happy Interdependence Day, and I hope you have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.